Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the June 16th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk this morning will be Ms. Skye Snellgrove. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter, Council Procedure Bylaw 2018 number 7272 and Ministerial Order number M192, governing open meetings during a state of emergency and the Provincial Health Officer Order regarding gatherings and events. Therefore, members of the public are required to observe meetings virtually and not attend in person, and question period will be suspended throughout the duration of the provincial health orders in effect. I will be so happy to stop reading that in a few months, I hope. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, and Ms. Snellgrove, we have one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For agenda item 5A, Jen Cody, Nanaimo Food Share Society, we're adding a PowerPoint presentation titled Nanaimo Food Share Food Policy Council, and we're also adding a recess at 10:30.
Excellent, thank you. Motion for approval of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favour? Any opposed? Motion carries. A motion for adoption of the minutes as circulated. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. And the presentation. Ms. Cody, good morning. We can see you. Can you hear us? We can't hear you, though.
The first meeting of the day is always the one where you get reminded you're on mute.
Well,
so it's nice to see everybody today.
I was going to say, unlike Council's attitude towards me, we want to have you unmuted. If you're ready, we're ready. Please proceed. Thank you for doing this morning.
Thank you very much, Mayor Crowe. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank the committee members and council and city staff for the opportunity to present today. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm presenting on Snuneymuxw territory and grateful for sharing this land and the work that we do on the land. I want to take a moment to also thank the City of Nanaimo and the staff for their support for community food security. In 2019, the city purchased the 5 acres farm at 933 Park Avenue, and the purchase of this farm has meant a great deal, I think, to the community and for Nanaimo Food Share. It has been providing farm space that's is now producing food for the Good Food Box and many programs that exist there. Also wanted to acknowledge the agriculture assessment that was conducted at the East Wellington Park and the work that's creating a park plan that places agriculture as a part of a priority for that property. And of course, the support that the city mobilized staff to support food security when COVID hit. And so I thank the city very much for all of those activities and the many others that I know the city is engaging in. I'm here today to present support for a food policy council. Next. So a food policy council is an innovative collaboration between community organizations, local government, and community members who work together to facilitate networking and information sharing, coordinate stakeholders' response to community food and nutrition security, act as a food and nutrition security advisory for local government and others, and supports official community plans and municipal planning. Next. And it also creates opportunities for coordinated strategic food security planning. And some of the benefits include improving efficiencies, maximizing existing resources, reducing redundancies, and creating dialogue and policy recommendations. Next. Some areas of coordination and action can include healthy food access, climate change mitigation and adaptation, local food economic development, reconciliation, food waste reduction, and other food and nutrition security issues. Next. And of course, the Food Policy Council supports city policy, and many of those policies are included in the Nanaimo's official community plan and other official documents that the city has. Next. So when COVID hit, the city mobilized staff to support food security, and 2 staff facilitated the emergency food working group of the Health and Housing Committee. And out of that working group came a report to recommend the city support establishing a food policy council. And at the December 2020 meeting, the council approved city staff participation in the Food Policy Council as a non-voting member, and that included one council member. Next. And some of the current activities leading up to the presentation today have included that Nanaimo Food Share in January received funding to continue facilitating the meetings of the food providers, to continue sharing information and working towards coordinated action. The network represents many sectors of the local food system, and many of those members that are currently participating will become members of the Food Policy Council and act as liaisons with other networks and groups to bring the priorities to the Food Policy Council. We've been holding monthly meetings. There's been initial discussions of the network and participation of the Food Policy Council. And there's also been some planning for an inclusive approach, including stakeholders who are people with lived experience. Next.
And then one of Ms. Cody, Councillor Martman has a question.
Oh, certainly.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair, what does lived experience mean?
It's people in the community who are who have in their lives and experienced food insecurity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martman. The impact of this work has been in relationship building, information sharing, and identifying priorities for food security, and increasing accessibility to the community food resources for community members in need of food support. And also there's been opportunity to provide some input to local governments, and one of the areas was an example of an outreach from the individual on the Environment Committee who was asking some questions and some information regarding agriculture's role in mitigating climate change and some of the tools to measure that role. So there was some interesting conversation and research that came out of that. And of course, there's ongoing follow-up and partnership with city staff in developing the Food Policy Council. Next. The food policy councils are funded through diverse sources, and Nanaimo Food Share has some able to receive funding. This funding is going to end this month, and in the next year, then Nanaimo Food Share is willing to dedicate an additional $5,000 to staff time to contribute to the coordination of the Food Policy Council. And we're also willing to work with community partners to obtain additional funding. The next steps will be to include developing the representation of the council and ensure that it represents a broad range of stakeholders in the food system. There's a need for additional community outreach, for obtaining expressions of interest in participating on the council, and creating a terms of reference, principles, and priorities for this year and for subsequent years. The Food Policy Council would be an independent community initiative led by Nanaimo Food Share. It would not be a city committee, and the Food Policy Council would be inclusive of community stakeholders, including the city and other governing and decision-making bodies. This makes the motion by the council in December 2020 so important because it recognizes the importance of the city participation and partnership with the community in addressing food security issues in the community. The city would participate on the Food Policy Council, and the Food Policy Council would provide an advisory and consultative role to the city in developing initiatives and policies when invited to do so. Next. So our proposal is that the City of Nanaimo grant Nanaimo Food Share $10,000 as bridging funding, while community stakeholders identify additional funding sources. The $10,000 would establish the Food Policy Council and coordinate and contribute to the coordination of the Food Policy Council and help Nanaimo Food Share in leading the work on sustainable food system development with multi-stakeholders in the community and across the food system. Once the structure and the representation to the Food Policy Council has been established, then we intend to report back to Council. We anticipate that there would be a need for a yearly budget of $30,000 in order to support the ongoing activities of the Food Policy Council. And that, and I believe that that is the end of my presentation.
Ms. Cody, thank you very much. And as someone who's known you for a while, I won't say how long, I just want to express on behalf of Council and my personal thanks to you for all the work you've done in this area over many years. And know that I realize this isn't a retirement speech or anything like that, but just having said that, I think your contribution deserves to be recognized publicly, so thank you. I'm sure we have some questions from Council. Councillor, yes, Councillor Armstrong first, I gather. Sorry, Councillor Armstrong. I was too excited by Councillor Bonner raising his hand over here on my right and showing up on my screen, but I'll get used to this. We'll let Councillor Armstrong go first.
Thank you, Jen. Or sorry, Ms. Cody. My question is this had been established in 2012. We did have a food council. Do you know what happened to that, and what were the differences between what's proposed now and what happened then?
So Councillor Armstrong, could which organization are you talking about in 2012?
There was a food council established by the city. I was part of it when we were sitting at the tables to establish it. And I'm just wondering what happened to that, and are there lessons learned from why that didn't succeed, or?
Yes, no, I don't recall actually participating in the Food Policy Council in 2012. So I'm not entirely certain about what might have been happening within the city in terms of those activities. Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Armstrong, I don't see any staff jumping forward to comment either, so.
It was done under Mr. Horn, so maybe that's why.
Councillor Martman, I think has something to say, and then I'll get to Councillor Bonner. Councillor Martman, can you assist us with a bit of history here?
Here I am. I'm not going to say my memory is absolutely correct, but because I was on SPAC, and I think in 2012, we looked at coordinating the food providers, right? So it was a different type of coordination. It was so that we weren't duplicating services between community kitchens, Loaves and Fishes, Food Share, etc. So I believe it was a different program.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Martman. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Ms. Cody, or maybe staff. In December of last year, a letter of support from the City of Nanaimo was sent to City of Nanaimo Food Share. Will be requesting that to the Nanaimo Regional Medical Health Officer, asking for an additional $5,000. Do you know if that money was ever achieved?
Well, my understanding, Councillor Bonner, is that that letter is yet to be sent.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not. So my understanding is that the letter, that the $5,000 request is still in process.
Okay, and I guess, is this to staff? It's the City of Nanaimo Food Share, so I'm guessing that's you folks. Is that correct?
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. My understanding is the motion was that we would provide the city would provide a letter of support to Food Share in their request for the $5,000 funding. I've been advised by staff that because of other work that was going on right now on various aspects of this program, they have not proceeded yet with that ask. We have not provided the letter of support at this time.
Okay, so it's still outstanding. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Cody, you mentioned that you would be seeking other entities to provide funding, and I'm wondering if that process has started, or I'm not looking for exact contributors, just whether or not it's actually started or it's way too early to determine that.
It has started, but there at this point, then we haven't actually submitted any applications for funding at this time, but we have identified potential sources of funding, and some of the application dates are coming up in the fall.
Thank you.
And Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through the chair, so you're looking at a request for 10,000 as bridging funding, and you mentioned that there would be an annual budget of 30,000 approximately. Are you anticipating that after, if we chose to move forward with bridging the funding, that you will be able to raise the 30,000 annual budget yourself?
Well, I think that what we're looking towards is community partnership in moving that forward, and we would, the $30,000 I would see as being a partnership between community stakeholders, the city, and potential other grant funding as well.
Thank you. For me, food security is paramount in our city, and healthy food is even more important. So I would like to actually move the motion and get it on the floor that the city of Nanaimo grant Nanaimo Food Share 10,000 as bridging funding while community stakeholders identify additional funding sources.
And we have a seconder with Councillor Bonner. And do you wish to speak to Councillor Bonner?
I just want to say, I think with the money that would go towards this, this is our best return on investment. This is not, it's substantial, I'm sure, to Nanaimo Food Share, but the bang we get for this in helping our community and be healthy, which is healthy and livable community, I definitely support doing what we can.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I don't disagree with Councillor Martman's statements or opinion on this, and I want to be supportive, but I'm also very leery of immediately jumping to answer a funding request, and it seems to me that it would be more appropriate to defer this to upcoming budget deliberations and have it as part of a bigger discussion. So I'm not making a motion to that effect right now, but that's my initial thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Turley and then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to finance staff. So is there some sort of a fund that this would come from, or would it add to the property taxes?
Ms. Mercer.
Through the chair to Councillor Turley, yes, the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve would be the appropriate place to fund this from, and there is funds in there to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. I definitely would like to see this Food Policy Council up and running. It's a network of different folks from representative areas of the food system working together to provide policy for the city to support and also develop their own programs and initiatives to strengthen our local food system. I can't remember when the motion was brought forward by staff to get the ball rolling on this, but we do have a community partner that's willing to do the administrative and organizing to get this established, and is requesting $10,000 to get this done. Where we don't quite have the capacity to do it in-house, and so I think that this is an important opportunity, and my hope would be that this organization would be established, by the time that we start doing our budget deliberations, so that an annual request would come forward for how the city could support this organization ongoing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock. I had the same question that Councillor Thorpe did. I don't like to see money spent unless we have some comment at least or knowledge from staff. My impression from Ms. Mercer's comments is that obviously there'd been some groundwork done. We know where the money comes from, and we do have the money. It's not a lot of money. I think it's a good investment. If Ms. Cody's back here in 6 months or a year and can't point to what I'll that overworked phrase, deliverables that have been successful, so be it. But I think it's in the best interest of the city and the citizens. Anything we can do to encourage this, it's a modest investment, I think, with the potentially significant returns. Councillor Bonner and then Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Worship. To the motion here, we've been talking about this actually for quite some time, right? This entire process came out of the Health and Housing Task Force. And I know that staff has endorsed not only that report, but also the report on the Food Council. So I think it's now time, they're ready to go, that we should be ready to go to help them. So it is a modest amount of money. I appreciate that we always a lot of talking about first time heard deferred, but this isn't the first time we've heard this, and we knew this was coming. So I'm just not sure what more we need to do to get this ball rolling. So and also food security is in our strategic plan. So it's time to, forgive the phrase, put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Worship. I am prepared to support this. I think it's very worthwhile, but I am not totally comfortable with the process. And whether or not we've heard the need for this before in some form or other, this is a first time ask. And I believe in the concept of first heard deferred. So I will support it today, but with that expressed reservation. And I think as we move forward, I think requests for funding really need to be deferred on the whole till we have broader budget discussions and we can put everything in perspective. But having stated those reservations, I'm prepared to support this good cause today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Nothing wrong with a little balanced skepticism. Seeing no further speakers, all those in favor, Councillor Armstrong, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to say we did hear the request for $10,000 back in December, and we asked for it to come forward at a later date. So I don't think it's a surprise, and I'm 100% behind this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. Seeing no further speakers, all those in favor? Any contrary? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Cody. Good morning.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the support from City Council. Thank you very much.
Very good. Take care now.
You too.
We have no delegations, Ms. Snellgrove, and the next item is reports, and the first is the Heritage Home Grant Application 167 Irwin Street. Mr. Lindsay, are you going to toss it to Mr. Schulberg?
Your Worship, I'll quickly introduce it. I know Mr. Schulberg was here at the last time we had an earlier grant this year, and it was at the end of the meeting, and I'm sure council or committee would have normally had numerous questions for him, but that day we passed. So if you have questions today, I know he'd be more than happy to step forward. This morning, Your Worship, we're seeking the committee's support in a grant, support for a grant application, the amount of $1,706.25 for the property at 167 Irwin. And Your Worship, that number is based on the 50-50 cost share under the grant program, which is to a maximum of $2,500. So as I mentioned, this is the second grant proposal this year, and there remains money in the budget to support this request, and staff are supportive.
Councillor Martman. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. You're there.
Okay, oh, there I am. So I would like to move the motion as recommended.
Thank you very much. Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Mr. Schulberg, appreciate it this morning. The next item is 7B, the reopening of Bevan Pool. Ms. Wark, Mr. Groot, good morning. A source of much correspondence.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. Thank you for your time today. So we're here to provide Council with information regarding the impact of reopening of Bevan Pool this year, and looking for support from the committee to direct staff regarding the reopening, possibly in October, providing provincial health orders permit that. And with that, I'd like to hand that over to Ms. Wark for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Ms. Warwick.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I just want to let you know that we also have our aquatics manager on Zoom this morning, should there be any questions that we need her to answer for us. So I'm here to propose to Mayor and Council that staff are directed to reopen Bevan Pool on October 4th, 2021. You may recall that we came to you with the reopening plan last summer, which had the Nanaimo Aquatic Center reopening on September the 10th, and phase 2 of our plan recommended that we open Bevan based on demand and a cost-benefit analysis. So throughout the pandemic, we have had revised operating schedules and definitely many required COVID protocols, which had an impact on the number of people that could attend our aquatics facilities. So we had decreased space available, limited capacity numbers. Despite that, all of the user groups and members of the community were offered something, whether that be from length swimming to aquafit to swim lessons to rentals for user groups and swim clubs. The only real disadvantage is everybody couldn't get as much time as they wanted and have as many people in the pool as they wanted. So throughout the course of the pandemic, we have had individuals and various user groups expressing the desire for Bevan Pool to reopen. And you can see on the report today that there are some attachments from the White Rapids Swim Club and the Nanaimo Child Development Center. And we've had quite a number of emails from individuals expressing the desire to open the pool. So especially since the announcement of the restart plan on May 25th, theoretically, that has us going back to normal on September 7th, but that's provided that numbers are down, we have enough people vaccinated, and there are very few hospitalizations. Should we actually be back to normal by September 7th, staff is proposing that we could be ready to open Bevan Pool by October the 4th. There are definitely some challenges. There are a lack of certified lifeguards now, and it's difficult to get training to certify lifeguards. We've had many staff that have moved on since we weren't able to keep them all employed, those that were casuals, that is. So we feel that we need that time to ensure that we can schedule enough training and hire enough lifeguards so that we can be fully staffed up so that we can open Bevan Pool on October the 4th. You can see on attachment C of the report that with going back to normal, our revenues at NAC will go up and our expenses will go down because we'll no longer have to follow all the same protocols with the additional cleaning and additional staffing. And so if we actually achieve 100% of 2019 levels of attendance at both pools, the overall impact of opening Bevan Pool would actually mean a savings of around $98,000 compared to the COVID operating budget, which we submitted for 2021. If revenues are realized at 75% of the 2019 levels, then we would need an additional $84,000 of operating expenses to run both pools. And if the revenues are realized at around 50% of the 2019 levels, then we would require an additional $266,000 in operating expenses. We have no way of knowing how many people will attend come September the 7th, but I think the 2019 numbers are an average of the few years leading up to 2019, so feel fairly confident we should be able to achieve close to those numbers. It really depends how comfortable people are getting back to normal in their lives, but we also do have many individuals and groups expressing demand to use the facility. So staff is recommending that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council direct staff to open Bevan Pool on October 4th, 2021, providing the provincial health orders allow us to do that. And we've been working with Finance, who have indicated that if there was any projected deficit, it could be funded from surplus. And if the surplus was insufficient, the remainder could be funded from the General Financial Stability Reserve.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions. Councillor Martin and then Councillor Brown.
Actually, mine wasn't a question.
Well, we have a delegation, which I'd like to hear from first.
Oh, I thought they were just asked questions, so thank you. I'll wait.
Councillor Martman wants to get swimming again. Councillor Brown, you? Thank you. Look, firstly, I want to say thank you for the fulsome report, and also publicly to state what I think many of us have stated before, that and no criticism of public health officials, but the rules were changing fairly rapidly through the last year and a half. Staff had to be incredibly nimble, and your folks were on the front lines having to deal with the public who weren't always overly happy about missing their opportunities to use our recreational pools. So I just want to express publicly thank you to you and all of the staff who have worked through this very difficult year. We do have a delegation. Nicole Barbary, pardon me, Councillor Bonner.
Sorry, Your Worship, I actually do have a question. Last year, the senior levels of government gave us a substantial amount of money to cover our expenses for COVID, for which we're eternally grateful. Is there any indication, because things really haven't changed over the last year, that that money would be coming again?
Ms. Mercer.
Through the chair to Councillor Bonner, we haven't had any indication that another, restart grant or that is coming. So to date, we don't have anything other than the only thing we've heard is the Community Works Fund additional money, and that wouldn't be for operations.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Wark, thank you very much. We've certainly heard the requests from members of the public to reopen all of our facilities as quickly as possible. If I'm reading this report correctly, what you're recommending is, aside from financial considerations, which we have to take into account, the October opening is realistically the soonest that you could see us being able to open Beban in terms of staffing and following safety protocols?
Through the mayor to Councillor Thorpe, yes, that's correct. And I should add that we also have the outdoor pool open now, and we have lifeguarding starting up at Westwood Lake on the 29th of June. So I think that there are swimming options and there are lesson options available for the community. And we do have a number of staff that have been redeployed for the season. So realistically, getting staffed back up will take us until October 4th.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Groot.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Thorpe. Just additionally to that, if Council remembers, they supported a report that we came to Council with regarding a request for funding for some improvements at Bevan Pool. So staff and contractors are in the middle of that work right now too, and that's anticipated to be completed around that end of August, mid-September. And there's one key component, which is the expansion joint in the pool that actually needs a certain amount of time to cure. So in conjunction with Ms. Wark, that date was decided in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, Your Worship, just a follow-up comment, if I may. If I'm reading this and hearing this correctly, what we're attempting to do is get the pool reopened as quickly as possible, given the constraints that we're facing in terms of safety and staffing and upgrades and so on. So it's not that we don't want to see the facility reopened. I think this time frame seems realistic, although I'm sure some people would prefer that we just flick a switch and have it open tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Turley.
Worship, I guess the concern I have, and hopefully I can be told I'm wrong, which isn't unusual, but anyway, is the economy right now is a case where there's a huge shortage of people willing to work, is probably the bluntest way of putting it. And I speak to a lot of businesses that are running into these challenges. So I'm a little concerned, but I'm sure you've done your homework so that there are people that are able to. I guess what I'm asking is there a backup plan if you can't find enough lifeguards?
Ms. Wark.
Through the mayor to Councillor Turley, I do believe we have a backup plan which could consist of adjusting our operating schedules at both facilities if necessary. Beyond that, I'm not sure if we have anything else in mind, but I could refer to our aquatics manager to find out if she has anything else up her sleeves.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just to add to Ms. Work's comments, we always have a backup plan in place for staffing. And the biggest challenge right now that we face is the number of our staff who took temporary assignments outside. So most of those staff are senior level staff, and they are the ones that provide additional training for people in the community to become certified as lifeguards. So essentially, we just need them to return back to their positions so that we can continue to offer programming to the community. We are working with the different organizations. Right now, we're in communications with the White Rapids for additional training opportunities for their staff, and we are in constant recruitment and training for staff. So we are optimistic that we'll be in a position to have sufficient staffing levels when we get to October.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gonzalez. I think we are ready for the delegation. Ms. Barbary, good morning. I hope you can hear me. You will have 5 minutes. I will indicate when you have 1 minute left. If you haven't finished by then, not that I'm encouraging you to finish in 4 minutes. If you could introduce yourself, give us your name and address for purposes of the record. Okay. And then I'll start.
Am I good? May I start?
You're good. Good morning. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for hearing me today. My name is Nicole Barbary. I'm currently the president of the Nanaimo Diamonds Artistic Swim Club. I'm a former board member of the Nanaimo White Rapids Swim Club, but today I'm here representing all of the stakeholders and user groups for the Nanaimo pools. Next slide. This slide is taken from a presentation by the BC Life Saving Society in April. So 2 months ago. It shows the remaining closed indoor pools in the province of British Columbia. As you can see, that Bevan is one of those 5 remaining closed pools. The update from this presentation is that Abbotsford Recreation Centre opened approximately 2 weeks ago. And that leaves our pool and 3 pools in the city of Surrey remaining closed in the province of British Columbia. I'd like to point out that I'm completely aware that pools are very expensive to run and that user fees do not cover operation costs, but I think that they are a vital service to the citizens. I think this slide shows that most of the communities in British Columbia understand that. Next slide. Nanaimo's very own Dr. Steve Bierman has received more than 1 award from the Queen for his dedication and work towards drowning prevention through the Life Saving Society. I emailed a position statement that he created that deemed swimming instruction essential during the pandemic even, and noting its own immunization effects against drowning. Drowning continues to be the #1 cause of unintentional deaths of children aged 1 through 4. And #2 for children under the age of 10. And you can see that it continues to be a yearly problem for all Canadians under the age of 60. The pandemic has caused a massive gap in water safety instruction that is predicted to show its deadly effects for the next several years. Next slide. Here are the user groups that I've been in contact with and that I'm representing today. I believe there should be a push by our city's recreation department to do some catch up on swim safety education. And I believe that the Nanaimo aquatic sports organizations can help with that effort. And those are the ones listed in the first bullet. The pools are well utilized by Nanaimo's families, seniors, for leisure, training, aquasize, and swim lessons, most importantly. Pools are also vital for rehabilitation by multiple groups like the Child Development Center, who I've been in contact with, special needs groups, and ongoing physiotherapy for things like post-operative care. And just for your information, Nanaimo General Hospital sees approximately 100 to 120 knee and hip replacements monthly alone. And that is just one cause for rehabilitation physiotherapy needs through aquatics. Next slide. I'm going to try and save some time here, and I'm going to represent the next 3 slides, which are our 3 major aquatic sports groups in Nanaimo. They all share very similar experiences this past season. Number 1 being reduced membership, and that ranged from a completely canceled season with the Nanaimo White Rapids Swim Club last summer, so 0 programming in water that season, all the way to the best case scenario of approximately 45% typical membership in all 3 clubs across the board this past season. All 3 of these clubs were unable to provide their usual swim instruction, meaning their learned swim programs to their very youngest athletes, which further adds to that gap in swimming education, safety education. All 3 were unable to provide their development programs, which generates their future athletes, which adds to the sustainability of the clubs over the long run. And all suffered, obviously, financial hardships this past season, surviving off of government grants and wage subsidy programs. So this first slide shows the Nanaimo Diamonds Artistic Swimming Club, active in the city for 34 years. Next slide.
1 minute, Ms. Barbary. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. This 5 years. Next slide. And finally, the Nanaimo Riptides, who have been active in the city for 45 years and swim out of the NAC. Next slide. So in conclusion, although I originally set out to represent the aquatic sports clubs of Nanaimo and their collective suffering, I recognize that these clubs are all likely to make a full recovery over the next few years with the hard work of their volunteer organizers. What I did realize through my research for this presentation is that there's a much larger safety issue at stake here, affecting mostly children and people with physical challenges. And that is the massive hole that COVID-19 has left in water safety education. Bonnie Henry predicts that all restrictions should be lifted by September 7th, as was mentioned. And so far, she has not proven to be a reckless woman. So in that case, I urge the city to reopen Bevan Pool as soon as possible, but early October at the very latest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're just 2 seconds over time. That's almost perfect. We'll give you 99.9%. Any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, Councillor Martman.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for your presentation. And being an avid swimmer myself and started as a young child, I believe this is very important for water safety. I would actually like to move the motion that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council direct staff to reopen Bevan Pool on 2021 October 4th, providing provincial health orders permit.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Brown, who's been very patient. Councillor Martman, do you wish to say anything further?
I just wanted to make an observation that I know this is impacted and sports has been impacted during COVID, but I also wanted to make a note of the good initiative of our staff. Staff had the opportunity during this time to reevaluate the scheduling of programs and services in aquatics, and as a result, when the Bevan Pool reopens, the public and user groups will experience a newly improved schedule with most school groups, public and therapeutic programming. So even though the pools weren't open, the staff was hard at work improving our city. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martman. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one I struggle with a bit because of I know it's not a huge financial thing, but the thing that concerned me was there are other sports activities that have taken a hit, probably more so than perhaps the swimming, because the seasons have been canceled for 2 years running. But I guess I would be reassured to support this if we were going to be looking at all other sports facilities to be treated in the same manner. we'll try to get them as open as quick as can, or more full usage as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Warwick or Mr. Groot, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thanks. Through the mayor to Councillor Turley. All of our other sports facilities are open, and the only restrictions are based on the provincial health orders. So we are happy to report that sports are able to play games now, adults and youth, and they're allowing up to 50 spectators. So I feel like we are getting back to normal, and that by September 7th, hopefully it'll be looking much like it used to, with some improvements. I'd also like to just make a quick note that while we were experiencing the pandemic last summer, the aquatics staff put together the water safety education team, which traveled around the community to a number of different waterfront sites. So I think that was a very positive initiative that we did to ensure that the water safety education was still happening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Not to prolong this, I'll certainly support the motion that's on the floor, and I just want to thank Ms. Barbary for attending this morning and representing the aquatic groups. And I understand your advocacy and your passion for getting people back in the water. We want to do that as safely as possible and as quickly as possible. So thank you for being here, and thanks to Ms. Warwick and staff. And I know that the city has in the past always supported water safety initiatives such as Dr. Bierman's program. So look forward to having things return to normal as quickly as possible in the pools and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bonner.
I removed myself from the queue because the question got answered.
Thank you, but you still show up in my queue. Now you're gone. If no further questions, motion's in front of us. All those in favor? Any contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Barbary, thank you for your presentation this morning. It appears to be successful. And Ms. Warwick, Mr. Groot, thank you very much on this aspect of things, but we've got you here for a little bit yet. The next item is the Leisure Economic Access Pass LEAP Program Review Recommendations. Mr. Groot, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council, we're here to present a report regarding the LEAP program and some recommendations. And that recommendation is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve of the program review recommendations provided by the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness, and direct staff to proceed with Phase 4 of the LEAP program review implementation. And with that, I'll pass the discussion on to Ms. Warwick. Thank you.
Ms. Warwick. Thank you, Mr. Groot.
Thank you. Way back in March of 2020, there was a special council meeting. A delegation expressed concerns about barriers to accessing our financial assistance program, which is called LEAP, Leisure Economic Access Pass program. So staff has been working with the Accessibility and Inclusivity Committee to conduct the review, which consisted of 4 phases. The first phase was information gathering, where we looked at an overview of the current program, which had seen a dramatic decrease in participation over the past 9 years. We conducted a survey of current LEAP program participants. We did a comparison with financial programs from other municipalities, took a look at the Phase 1 results from Reimagine Nanaimo, did an update on poverty statistics for Nanaimo, and received some input from the ACAI committee members. Once all of that information was gathered, we moved into Phase 2, where we did a review of the information, which essentially indicated that the framework for the program was quite sound, but it needed some refinement to make it more accessible to the community. So from there, we went into composing some recommendations for the program, which would address the program name, the administration of the program, the eligibility requirements for accessing the program, the application and approval process, the benefits that are offered through the program, and how the program's been marketed and promoted. When the recommendations were presented at the ACAI committee, the members there chose to remove one of the recommendations, which was to change the program name. There was an idea that there was some stigma attached to the name, but people felt that it had been a name that had long standing in the community and that we should keep it. They also recommended delaying a few other recommendations so that they could be more fully explored before they get implemented. But the rest of the recommendations could be fully implemented by this fall at some point. I won't go through the recommendations as you have them in your report. So I'm just open to any questions about the recommendations that we're making to provide better access to this program.
Thank you very much. Appreciate this. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Wark, thank you very much for the report. Since my days years ago now on the Parks and Recreation Commission, the LEAP program has been the subject of discussion and talk of revising, and I'm really pleased to see this report come forward. I like the recommendations that you've suggested. It basically enhances the ability of citizens to take advantage of this program, and I think it provides excellent opportunities for residents of our city. I do have a question though, and it relates to financial implications, which at first I did not see in the report, and then I did notice it under the options, that the financial impact will be nominal, and I was a little surprised to see that, and I wonder if you could expand on that. I thought there would be more financial impact.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Councillor Thorpe, that's an excellent question. So,
well, there's one.
Principal Thorpe is excited by that comment.
So in terms of the administration changes that we want to make to the program, those costs are quite nominal. It's just a matter of us doing the work in-house. But the cost of actually implementing the program is also quite nominal in that, if you think about it, the program offers 50 free drop-ins to skating, swimming, and gym programs. And it's quite likely that if these folks were not members of the LEAP program, they wouldn't be coming at all. So we wouldn't be getting any revenue from the folks that would be coming. So there's no difference there. And then in terms of registered programs, each person who belongs to the LEAP program can register for 4 programs at 50% off, up to a maximum of $40 each year. And we have a $15,000 line item in our budget, which is used to offset those costs. And over the past few years, on average, we've been spending between $13,000 and $15,000 to support those program registrations. So we feel that that's an adequate number for now until we see if the rest of the changes we make to the program enhance access for people.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And I feel it's an excellent program, and I'm glad to see it's being slightly expanded and improved, and I will fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In order, Councillors Turley, Brown, Gesselbrock, and Martman.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Ms. Wark. I have questions around number 4 and number 5 on the recommendations. The first one, I have to admit it surprised me a bit that we need to get Literacy Central Vancouver Island to proofread the revised. I mean, I understand the potential if you don't, but I guess I'm more concerned about what the cost of that would be. Is it just, as you say, nominal, or is it?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Turley, we actually didn't ask if there would be a cost to that. I think I made an assumption that they would do it for us at no cost, but I would imagine that if there is a fee, it will probably be nominal, and we'll be able to take it out of our operating budget.
Okay, thank you. And then on number 5, with regard to the private appointments for applicants because of the stigma, do these, and I profess ignorance here, but people that are applying for it, do they have access to computers and computer knowledge enough to be able to apply? Because there is a statement somewhere about being online, and I'm wondering if you could have a Q&A on connected with the application to answer a lot of the questions, as opposed to having a total private interview for someone.
Yeah,
I may be making assumptions here. But,
yeah, through the Mayor to Councillor Turley, we would definitely have both. We would have a Q&A online, and then we also will offer the option of private appointments, because sometimes people just need to learn a little bit more about what's available to them through the program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown. You decided to quite all right. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to staff. I probably missed this in the report, but what has the previous subscription level to the LEAP program been? Like, has it maxed out sort of what we've allotted for it, or is there still room for more people to apply?
Through the mayor to Councillor Gesselbrock, are you referring to the financial aspect of it or just the sheer participation number?
Like the participation, I guess there's $15,000 that sort of went to the program. Like in the past, has that been all used up, or has it not been used up?
Approximately 9 years ago, we were using all of it, and in the last few years, we've been getting close to using all of it, but we have not been oversubscribed at all.
Mm-hmm. And did we put in measures before, when it was being fully subscribed and used up? Did we put in measures to sort of be able to assess sort of suitability for the program, more stringent measures, and then that reduced the level of subscription?
That's correct.
Okay, and so now we're tweaking that, and we probably will see an increase as a result. And I guess annually we'd get a report back, whether we're using all that money up or not, so that we can adjust appropriately.
Absolutely.
Right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Am I on? Yes. Okay, thank you. I'd actually like to move the motion that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve of the program review recommendations provided by the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness, and direct staff to proceed with Phase 4 of the LEAP program review implementation.
And I have a seconder with Councillor Thorpe.
And if I can just
speak to it.
Being on the Akai committee, there was extensive conversation. It was a good process. I think what we realized was what we could do the most was remove barriers so that we didn't have to make the process so onerous. And then the other thing that we've got in the recommendations that I really believe is we need to make the community members aware of this program and the availability. And my own experience from being low income myself in the past and having lots of friends that were low income is knowledge. A lot of people don't realize that this is available for themselves and or the children. So the more we can educate our community, the better it will be. So definitely like these improvements.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. Thought I'd push the button already. I guess this may be a hard question to answer, and I certainly can't find it in our budget, which doesn't surprise me from my own point of view. I'm sure Ms. Mercer can find it. Is the people who would access this program, what part of the city budget is paid for that? Like there's various programs they ask, and each one of those programs generates revenue from fees. How much is that total revenue? And the reason I'm sort of asking this is like, what if we decided to just pay for the whole thing? And it was free to access. I know we've had this conversation before, right? But I'm just wondering how much time and energy we're spending on this program when we could just make it free for everybody to attend our various events. So I'm just kind of curious, how much do we receive in revenue to cover our costs for the programs that the LEAP program would be responsible for?
Ms. Mercer, that sounds like a rather complex question for...
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Bonner, that is a complex question, and that would be something that we would have to go away and try to figure out how to pull all of that information out. As you know, parks, recreation programs don't cover the cost. So there's many aspects to that question. So
Okay. I'm not going to ask that you answer it. I'll do my own work. I'll go through the budget again and see if I can't pull some of this out. And if I run into trouble, I'll man, because I don't think we're going to make that decision today. And I appreciate the thing.
Yeah.
I'm just unfortunate that Councillor Thorpe got a really good question and I get a very complicated one. Yeah.
Complicated is good too, Councillor Bonner, and I understand what you're driving at, but keeping that kind of statistical information, I suspect, would be really problematic. We're already getting enough flack, I can tell you, for people at City Hall who are having to do their homeowner grant applications online and having to disclose their social insurance numbers. And for some of us old enough to remember Lester Pearson and the promise we'd never have to give our social insurance numbers, except for the most limited purposes, it's a different time. But no, it's a good question, and maybe it's not a lot of money, but to determine, I suspect, will be hard. So if you can find an answer, I'm being quite serious when I say this, I'd be happy, I think all of council would be, to hear back if it's possible and reasonable. Any further questions before we vote on the motion? All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the Nanaimo Aquatic Centre mechanical mezzanine roof, parapet, and wall repairs. Mr. Groot, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council. What you have before you here is a report for decision regarding a multi-year project at the Nanaimo Aquatic Centre. It started off as a simple re-roofing project, and of course, with any aged facility, we came across some remediation and deterioration issues. So there was a phase one where we came across some issues in the upper parapet walls, and those had been addressed. And then in this year's phase two, or last year's phase two into this year, we also came across some issues in that mechanical mezzanine room. So the request today is to add an additional $227 to the current year plan to address those issues. That is the most economical way to address those issues, rather than trying to complete or button up the project around deteriorated structural members and then reopening that at a later date. It would make the most sense to address that this year and complete the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Groot, and I'm hesitant to correct you, but it's $227,000. If it's 227, we should be so lucky.
Yeah.
Councillor Turley got quite excited there. We thought we were saving.
My apologies. Sorry about that. Yeah, we wouldn't be here if it was 227.
Well, look after the pennies, the dollars won't look after themselves. What is it? Something like that. Councillor Brown. Move the recommendation. Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the Rotary Bowl Oval Renewal Project. And Mr. Groot again.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council. I want to apologize if there's any confusion around or bringing this forward again so soon after the May Finance and Audit. And I went through the material at the presentation, and I thought it would make sense to possibly bring it forward for a little bit more discussion, and that would be for a few reasons. We're working on tendering the 8-lane sprint track as a 2021 project that was in the approved plan, and the oval had been in the previously approved 5-year financial plan for 2024. The pandemic hit, we applied for a grant, we weren't successful with the grant, and so then the project was put back into 2024, fully funded out of the Community Works Fund. As part of discussion with financial staff earlier this year, and what I missed putting into the slide from last month's presentation was also that point around staff became aware that the Community Works funding is due to expire, the current program, in March of 2024. And with the oval track being funded out of the Community Works Fund in 2024, that puts us into a issue of funding around community works funding versus possibly general taxation. And then one of the other pieces of information or discussions that we had with Nanaimo Track and Field Club were the events that they can apply for and possibly secure to bring to the community if that oval is completed in the 2021-2022 season. It would allow them to, as stated in the report, to potentially be successful in hosting numerous events that could bring thousands of people to the community per event. So that's why the concept of bringing this report back to council so soon in advance of tendering the 8-lane sprint track as well. Yeah, because the other option would have been to tender the 8-lane sprint track as the base bid and then put the oval in as a provisional item and then potentially come back to council after that document comes back to have this very same discussion around potentially moving that funding into an earlier year. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Groot. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a quick comment. There's no question in my mind community work funds will be reinstated after that date, because that would be political suicide to take them across, take them out. But the one question I just have, and probably through to finance staff, is I assume if we approve this today, then some of the items that we put forward last month will now have a smaller pool of funds to potentially fulfill some of those projects.
Ms. Mercer.
Through the chair to Councillor Brown. So when we presented at the last committee meeting, the number I gave you for the Community Works Fund assumed that this project was funded. So there is still the same amount of money for all of those projects that you put forward. So we had assumed that this was still going to be funded, and the excess funds were the potential second payment we'll get from the Community Works Fund and any of the residual funds left that we hadn't committed already.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Staff's ahead of us as always. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm wondering, I know that we've committed to pay it out of Community Works funds, but we've used the Asset Management Fund to build fences in the same area. And we also have a Parks and Recreation Fund for infrastructure, I believe. We just actually talked about it for the $227,000. Could we not look at either one of those two funds for this particular project?
Through the chair to Councillor Bonner. So when Ms. Fulla goes to fund the entire project plan, or she looks at all the funding sources, and each funding source has different restrictions. So she looks at each one to see where we get the best bang for our buck, so to speak, what is the most effective way to fund things so we can fund the largest amount of projects we can. So when she goes, and what she's currently doing right now, is looking to see how she can move things around to make sure that we try to fund everything we want. So yes, we could look at other funding sources, but that's kind of her job to make sure that we can fund everything we have on the plate. So that is something she'll look at, because what we're doing, as Mr. Groot said, it's been indicated clearly to us that we should be spending all of our Community Works funds by March 31st, 2024. So that's what Ms. Fulla is trying to do right now, is move things around so everything that's in the current plan can still be funded, as well as additional things. So I think that might be a roundabout way of answering your question, but I hope I did.
Sort of. The reason I was asking is, as I'm familiar with the restrictions on many of these funds, Community Works funds is practically wide open. There's so many things that we can use it for.
Yeah, there are some restrictions, yes.
And not, but there is less restrictions than say as asset management or that sort of thing. That's why I was kind of wondering is that we have more flexibility on the Community Works funds, and if this particular project could be paid out of an asset management reserve fund and fit in the criteria, then that would free up that Community Works funds for other things that couldn't come out of the asset management fund. So that's mostly a political statement, I guess, more than anything else. So it doesn't, that's just my thinking along the lines here.
Through the chair to Councillor Bonner. At this point, if we wanted to accelerate the project, the Facility Development Reserve is not applicable because the Rotary Bowl doesn't contribute to the reserve, so only contributing facilities can be funded from the Facility Development Reserve. And I would not recommend the General Asset Management Reserve because that would, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that's going to push us below our minimum balance within the 5-year plan, so that wouldn't be recommended. Putting it to Community Works give us the most flexibility. We have some, as council knows, we have some other big projects coming down the pipe, and so General Asset Management Reserve is a potential funding source to help move some of those projects forward. So I am trying to preserve some of that funding. We know we need, or we're talking about a new operations center out at Public Works. That'll be a big dollar project, and so we're trying to keep money free to help alleviate the pressure on property taxes so we can move forward with some of those larger projects.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Groot. First of all, thanks for coming back today and giving us this update. I was somebody who supported delaying funding of this project. It seemed to make sense at the time, but having read your report and also having talked to members of the track club, I know that they have high hopes of hosting a number of quality events in the coming couple of years, and the track and field facility at Rotary Bowl is really a prime driver in our sports tourism, and as we see the restart kick in, I think it's going to be very important that we have that facility up and running, and now is the perfect time to make those repairs. So I'm going to support the recommendation. In fact, I'll move the recommendation if there's no other discussion in a minute. I do want to just comment that first of all, I appreciate staff's expertise on the funding source. I think it makes sense to me to use this money while we have it and before we don't have it, and hopefully we'll get some more. But I think this is an ideal candidate for that funding, and well, I'll be quite blunt, Your Worship. There's just such an excellent article in this week's Nanaimo News Bulletin regarding the track club and their plans for the restart, and it's such a worthwhile facility that I'm very much in favor of supporting this and doing this work while the track is used less than usual. So thank you for that, and I'm willing to rethink my opinion on this project and the timing of it, and if there is no further questions, I will move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any questions, discussion? All those in, Councillor Bonner, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. The question I have is, we're moving this project up 3 years, and I know we've had a lot of conversations about, from a accounting point of view, about pulling things out of the ground and having to acquire them. Is there any cost to doing this work 3 years ahead of what we originally planned on doing it?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Bonner, actually I would suggest that there's probably cost savings by being able to combine two projects in a single event. You know, you have single mobilization, single demobilization. There isn't the concern of the unknown of cost inflation of material or labor costs or any other potential unknowns, right? So I would suggest that there's a potential for a cost savings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. No further questions or discussion. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the update to the temporary public art program and development of the urban design roster. Mr. Groot, and then we're going to go to Ms. Collins, or straight to Ms. Collins, Mr. Groot.
Actually, I'll introduce
Ms.
Allison Collins. I don't think you've had the pleasure of meeting her yet. She's been with the city for almost a year now, working on the culture and events team. You'll recall at the GPC on culture and events last year, there was some talk of revamping the temporary public art program, and so she's here to speak to that this morning for information, as well as talking about the development of the urban design roster. And the recommendation that is coming forward for you today is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council consider an increase of $25,000 to the public art budget during the 2022 to 2026 financial plan deliberations to support the urban design roster initiative.
Thank you very much. Ms. Collins, welcome.
Hi, nice to meet everybody, Mayor and Council. So I'm here today just to talk a little bit about the two programs, to both the updates that we're planning to make to the temporary public art program and to some new developments that we're calling the urban design roster. So as you probably know, the temporary public art program has been in place for about a decade now, and this is our first time to do a kind of holistic review of the program and to review all the aspects and make some important changes to the way that it's being run. So the program itself has been running for this since 2013 as a kind of public sculpture exhibition, annual public sculpture exhibition in the summer, often in kind of Maffeo Sutton Park, but sometimes in other places in the city as well. And so although the program is well loved by the community, there's often the case that sculptures, which are sometimes retained past their one-year period, aren't necessarily created to last. They sometimes, we find that they've been degrading, or that we, you know, and then we're very sad to let them go when they no longer are viable. And so the changes that we're proposing to the program would be to move over to a more of a commission structure that broadens the scope of the program to different locations around the city, and also changes the time scale so that it's more of a 2 to 5 year time scale for projects to be implemented, giving artists a chance to plan the materials and the projects for a longer lasting kind of effect. So the previous program scope also was particularly focused on sculpture, and these changes are, which is very popular now with developers who are looking to do CAC contributions in public art. So sculpture is being achieved under other kinds of programs that the city supports. And so now is a good moment to try to update our own program to welcome other kinds of art into the public sphere. Also, one of the big things that we noticed when we looked at this program is that artists are not currently being compensated at the rates that are set by CARFAC, which is the national body that brings scales of compensation for artists and recommendations to all public bodies as well as public museums and institutions. So the changes that we're proposing will bring our compensation rates in line with CARFAC. I wanted to bring also to your attention some work. We've been speaking a lot today about Bub and Pool, so it's lovely to be able to share with you some of the work we've been doing behind the scenes with Elliot Whitehill. So this is an example brought forward not as a temporary program, but as a program that is site-specific and context responsive. And this is sort of the direction that we hope that the public art programs can go, where artists are given a longer lead time to develop a project that then can be situated in a public space, a Nanaimo kind of context that people can respond to and have a lot more depth of engagement with those places. As well, one of the things we really noticed is that there's such a strong appetite for public art to take place in multiple locations around the city, urban spaces, parks, all of the different parks around the city. And so as we move to make changes in places like Deverell Square or other locations around the city, we're really hoping that this program change can bring new projects to those areas. Another really key factor is the way that we work with Indigenous artists, which requires a longer lead time and different kinds of consultation. So it's really important that we get this right as the city and give a longer approach. And so bringing a more of a commission structure allows artists to have dialogue with us, through us, to SNNAIMA for consultation about the way art will take place in public space. So just to summarize, there's those key things that we're thinking of changing. So moving from a kind of sculpture exhibition to a works commission, that instead of having a large body of sculptures, we would have 2 new works commissioned annually, but that they would then last longer. So over the period of time of about 5 years, we would start to accumulate roughly about the same amount of work in public space. We would have this commissioning style approach that would have the longer lead time and broaden the scope to other areas of the city, and that it would be more responsive and more site-specific. So that's the summary of that program, and I'm just going to move on to the urban design roster, but please feel free to ask questions along the way. So this program, the urban design roster, is a newly minted program in 2021. But it adds to the kinds of projects and activities that we've been doing as a city over a longer period of time. So it's not necessarily new activity, but it is a new program that formalizes the way that we undertake this work. So the roster itself would be a group or a listing of artists who would come to the city. We would put out a call and they would apply to be listed on this roster. And we would use that roster as a way of bringing artists into dialogue and connection with other departments at the city who are looking to take small infrastructure projects that might have place for adornment or adaptation by art and design. Some key examples here just to show you of like the kinds of things you might see are like manhole covers, traffic barriers, bike racks, adornments for utility boxes, all sorts of little murals and things like that that might appear on infrastructure. So, yeah, one of the key things about that program is that it is meant to kind of open up art to a different group of practitioners, designers, illustrators, people who aren't necessarily making public sculpture, but have something to contribute to public life. What we're looking at here is an upcoming project. This should be being installed in the next 2 weeks or so. It's been a nice opportunity to pilot out some of these ideas. So we've been approached in the last year by graphic designer Sebastian Aboud, and it was a really good moment to connect Sebastian and his design work with the bylaw team that has been working to create anti-graffiti wraps in the downtown area. So there are 3 wraps that will be going on BC Hydro bins, and that was a partnership. We were funded partly by BC Hydro to undertake this work. And so Sebastian has created 3 designs. This is one of them. One will go at number 10 Chapel. There will be one at the corner of Dunsmuir and Albert, so not so far from City Hall, and one across the street from the Skinner Street Parkade. Another example of an upcoming project that we're working on is the city design manhole covers. So this would adapt our regular existing manhole covers with Nanaimo-specific designs. So we're working together with the engineering team, and these would become a kind of stock item available to developers or anyone doing infrastructure projects to opt to use one of these special designs in upcoming years. So we would have a kind of one-time cost to lay them out, set them up, but then they would be reproducible kind of for the next duration, and then we could set a kind of new schedule to do new ones at a later date. So these are some of the uses of the design roster that we envision, and so the purpose of the program is to make it a little bit easier and a little bit more effective for other departments around the city to come to us or to come together to interface with artists, because we know that that's not always the easiest workflow to install. So that pretty much summarizes both of these things, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Collins, welcome. Nice to meet you. Yeah, a couple of questions, if I may, just to further my education. Regarding the temporary public art program component, I totally understand that compensation levels have not risen in the past 9 years to keep pace with inflation, so that's understandable. If I'm reading this correctly and hearing you correctly, we're moving to only 2 projects per year. Mm-hmm. And can you just clarify for me how the criteria for those projects would be determined? Who would determine it? Is it what's the name of it? The Art in Public Spaces Working Group, or is that a staff decision? How would the criteria be determined and judged?
So if you look in your package, you should see there's two attachments. One is the call to artists for the temporary public art program, which lays out very clearly all the criteria. The criteria themselves haven't changed that much. It's a program that's meant to be open to the kinds of artwork that would be responsive to civic public site context. And the way that we adjudicate is to bring together a selection panel. So the Art and Public Spaces Working Group would participate in that panel. There would also be staff input, and then we would bring in like if there was specific, we would bring in like artist-specific kind of expertise, so potentially like other experts in the community.
All right, thank you. I just don't envy that job of picking two
rather
than picking 6 or 8. My other question is related to, and I notice your comments in the report regarding the commissioning process, but I don't see anything specific regarding decommissioning, except that these are intended to be 2 to 5 years.
So,
and could you elaborate on that? Because whenever art is removed, we usually hear complaints. Usually, not always.
That's been a bit of work that Julie and I have both been undertaking this year, is to identify what is technically part of the collection and what is not. And so temporary public art by nature always has a fixed term. And so all of the works that we see, say, in Maffeo Sutton that are part of the temporary program, they're really only rented, let's say, from the artist for 1 year. Sometimes artists allow us to continue using that work in a public space. It's sort of a generosity that is extended by circumstance at times. And so we don't really anticipate a official decommission process, because we would be setting terms for this work. So when we install the work, we would have a fixed term in mind at a contract with the artist to collect the work at the end of that period of time.
All right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Councillor Turley and then Councillor Martman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Ms. Collins, and nice to meet you. My question is regarding the eligibility and who cannot apply for the temporary public art program call for artists. And under who cannot apply, it says for-profit entities, and it's a little confusing, because I would think that a professional artist hopefully is doing it for some profit. Are they included in the ones that cannot apply, or
No.
what are you referring to as for-profit?
We're really speaking about like corporate entities there. So we're really not thinking about artists running individual, because all artists may run an individual business as part of the way they support themselves, but the work that they undertake as part of that is a creative work that would be eligible to be, the product of the artwork is eligible. It's more geared towards preventing sort of a corporate structure from coming to us to receive funding to undertake their public art projects.
So I guess I'm just making an assumption here that if a professional artist received a sponsorship from a corporate entity, that wouldn't prohibit them from...
As long as it's their work that they're proposing and they retain the creative control of that work, it would be eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through you, the question I have is I'm very interested in the little smaller pieces like the manhole covers and traffic barriers, etc. And I was trying to find it in the report, but when it said about two major art pieces a year, was that separate from these small? Can you tell me more about the manhole covers?
Well, manhole covers is a great example of a project. Sometimes projects come to us on a sort of time-sensitive scale. Someone's working on an infrastructure project and they see an opportunity to do something creative alongside of their regular work. Manhole covers is one that we've identified in conversation with an engineer named Annalisa Fipke. And so we've discussed how, in order to undertake that, we need to connect her with artists. And so the roster is meant to set up a situation where artists have identified themselves and come to the city prepared to undertake that kind of work, so that we're not drawing from just simply a few people that we know in the community that are prepared and ready to undertake that, but that artists themselves can come to the city and nominate themselves to be ready to do that kind of work. There would still be a bit of work behind the scenes to select an artist, to interview them and to undertake the necessary steps to do a design project like that. But it's because it's a smaller project that maybe only has a small artist fee, it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate to go for a big public call.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner, and then Councillor Gresselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff of May. So I'm understanding the concept of the roster. I get that and appreciate that. I'm sort of more interested in how much art we're actually going to get on the ground going forward. Now, I understand you mentioned 2 projects a year. Now, in the other part of it is in manhole covers. Are we talking crosswalks? Literally anything is an option.
Each project is looked at in an individual way. So the roster is sort of set up as a resource, and then if someone is interested in doing a colored crosswalk, for example, that would be a discussion that we would have with Jamie Rose over in transportation, and we would discuss, what safety requirements need to be in place. For example, I know we do have one rainbow crosswalk in town. We've been discussing other potential crosswalks, but there are very specific parameters around what we can paint based on what kind of traffic signals are in place. And so we have that kind of discussion and dialogue with other departments that have expertise in those areas, who then come to us and say, oh, we're ready to undertake something creative. Can you bring us some work that can go onto the ground quickly?
So unless someone, say, from transportation came to you and said, we'd like to see an art crosswalk here, it's not going to happen?
Well, what we're finding is that there is quite a demand, actually. Like Active Transportation is interested in doing some public artwork. We've got this engineering project on the way. We've got a lot of projects that are kind of percolating under the surface, and this kind of process allows us to kind of be ready to take them up when they do arise.
Okay, and if I get back to the roster a minute, I have no intention of applying for this in my certain position, but I am an artist, and all of the things that you're describing here would probably fall under the type of art that I would do. So is for any other artist out there, it's just a question of they put an application in according to this criteria that you laid out here, and are they then picked, or who's picking them, sort of thing?
So there will be a selection process in place similar to the temporary public art program, because we can only accommodate so many people. And also we want to make sure that when we are adding artists to the roster that they have the necessary qualifications to undertake that kind of work. So they would submit a portfolio to us with CV, all the basic standard information, and then we would have this very similar process where we involve the Art and Public Spaces Working Group, representation and expertise from the community, and staff input. And then together we would arrive at, we're looking at probably about 20 artists for a 2-year term. And then at the end of that 2-year term, we would release that roster and ask for a new one. So people could indicate if they would like to renew, submit new portfolio materials, or new artists could be added.
Final question, if I may, is do you have criteria for certain types of art? So like different artists have different designs or different themes that they typically work on. Are we covering a number of areas, or is it just open to artists?
The design roster is actually an expansion to the design community, so it brings us into contact with graphic designers and creative designers, as well as illustrators, as well as any other kind of artist. So we're not necessarily vying for any particular style here, and we want to be kind of more inclusive. That's sort of the nature of this program, is to bring us into contact with people who wouldn't have already necessarily been thinking, oh, I want to be on a hydro box, or I think I want to do a manhole cover. They might see themselves somewhere at the city, so they could apply to this program, and then we could start to, through our own knowledge of what their work could do on a certain space, bring them together with other departments. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm looking at the question of equity, and I would hope there would be some sort of equity in terms of encouraging Indigenous artists to come forward, so that we had a little bit more of that there. So I understand everybody, the whole question is being equal and stuff like that, but I think in terms of, and again, this all boils down to reconciliation, is an equity look at the development of Indigenous artists from in our area. I would be very much in favor of. Thank you.
That is a really important point to raise and something that we think about quite a lot in our area. And it's actually kind of backed up to the level of the Art and Public Spaces Working Group, where some of that crucial work will take place, because there will hopefully be more representation of diverse voices on that group to weigh in on decisions as they're being made. But as well, if you look in the criteria in the actual programs themselves, we do make specific mention that we're especially encouraging equity-seeking groups to apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember seeing that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for the presentation and the proposal here. I really appreciate the thinking around shifting to like a more commission orientation with extended times of the contracts, and also this concept of a design roster, so that other departments can more effectively access artists. And I think there's a growing awareness around sort of an urban designer approach, where we sort of are taking into account the aesthetics, the usability, the engineering, and sort of all integrated together. And so maybe in the future there'll be a urban designer position at the city. But I really appreciate and encourage the cross-departmental design thinking, and then also the measures put in place that I think really is supporting artists and you know, the economy of art in our community. So thank you for the recommendations, and I fully support them.
Thank you. Councillor Martman and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Through you, I'm just wondering, financially, so we're to consider an increase of $25,000 to the public art budget. Can I ask how that works financially?
Through the
Ms.
chair.
Mercer.
Through the chair to Councillor Martman. So that would be an add to the budget unless funding could be found within the current budget. So whether that would be moving something else out or finding funding within the current budget. But if that's unsuccessful, then it would be an add to the budget. And taxation would be the funding source.
And this be something that could be taken out of the strategic initiative reserve? Not usually?
If it's an ongoing operational,
no,
it's not advised.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks. Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Gesselbrock got me a little excited there. I would say more than a position, an entire department. But if it's not on the floor, I'd like to move the motion.
I was going to say, settle down, everybody, settle down. Thank you very much. Councillor Brown has moved the motion. We have a seconder. Councillor Bonner. Any further discussion or questions? You've been at full cross-examination this morning, Ms. Collins. Well done. All those in favor? Any contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thanks. We're well past our 10:30 break, so 10 minutes, everyone. Hi, Leonard Krogh here. I'm here with Karen Lindsay today. She's going to show me how to sign up for our app.
Voyant Alert, the City of Nanaimo's emergency notification system. So we'll start by going into the App Store, Mayor Krogh.
Done.
Next, you're going to hit search. And you're going to search for the app, which is Voyant Alert. So it's VOYENT. Now you see, it's already selected it. Click there, hit get, and then we're going to install.
And why are we downloading this app?
We're downloading that so that you can get this onto your phone system, and what it will do is it will send you a push notification out. So if the City of Nanaimo issues an emergency alert, it will actually push the notification out onto your phone. The really nice part of this app is that it's anonymous, so it goes by postal code. So we're not requesting you to put your name or personal information in. It just works off of the app through your phone system. There are also, if you have family members or friends that maybe don't have a smartphone or would like another way, you can also sign up online or call our Public Works Department, and they have phone and texting options available as well. So there's lots of options for people depending on what their needs are.
Fabulous. So you can rest with some comfort knowing you can find out what's necessary and know that people who are important to you are notified.
Absolutely. So now you have Voyant Alert on your phone. And now just select open. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to tap in the postal code that it's prompting you.
All right. So
you just click on there and start entering. And then find on a map. So here you'll see the welcome page for the City of Nanaimo, and you want to subscribe to notifications, yes?
Yes.
Click that you agree to the terms, so click both to the yes for consent, and then hit next. And it's going to ask to either allow or not allow notifications, and you want to always allow.
Always allow.
Always allow. And the reason that is, if you don't allow, it won't push the notification out to you. So always allow.
Always allow.
And now you see here, you've got a message to accept that you've signed out. That's the two-factor authentication, and you're going to tap yes. And now you're in the system. Also, when you have a moment, we recommend that you pick your locations and sign up based on those locations, and then you'll get alerts from the City of Nanaimo.
Karen, thank you. Everyone, sign up.
Down here, okay? There we go.
Oh, hey, Tiana. Hey. It sure is the coldest rink in town.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, buddy!
Nice save, James!
Wow, your goalie is keeping you guys in the game. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, man, that's hot.
Sorry, that's the way I like it. Oh.
Go, 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 go!
Penalty shot!
Scalds from hot drinks are a leading cause of hospitalization for children under 5.
2 minutes, stand in the front, unsportsmanlike conduct.
Hot tea and coffee will cause serious burns to a child in less than a second.
Got it, kid? Use the lid.
This is the 2018 redux of the lighting at Nanaimo's historic bastion. I've had the pleasure of being part of the relighting project on this amazing building in downtown Nanaimo. So what we did is we replaced the original high-pressure sodium lights, which basically did an okay job of lighting up the bottom 10 feet of the building, and replaced them with modern LED lighting that has the capacity to change color. We can run through a number of different colors that we have pre-programmed here, in a pink, a purple, a green. Probably my favorite on here is Rainbow Chase for Pride Week. It'll actually run all the way around the building all the time.
With this new technology, organizations can now request that the bastion be lit to promote their cause by going to the City Nanaimo website and following the instructions. Go to Your Government, Bastion Lighting Requests, complete the lighting request form, and submit. You will hear from us within a couple days if your request has been approved, and the bastion will be lit in the colors that you have requested. If you have any questions, please contact the Mayor's office at 250-755-4400.
So the next time you're in downtown Nanaimo at night, come on and check out the new dynamic lighting at the Bastion.
We're here today to make a couple street names. There was some vandalism in town, and we're just going to make replacements. And the roads today we're doing are Dundas Street and Bruce Avenue. They're all 8-inch, and we use 3 different sizes, mostly 24-inch, 32-inch, and 36-inch. We do use a consistent font with street names. This is actually my metal blank, so the only material here is the material that I actually will cut out in vinyl. From here we have to take out the vinyl that's not needed, which is the outer. So all we want to do is save the inside border. From here we actually have to put a transfer tape on it. And what this does is it allows us to take the blue vinyl and pull it away from the clear backing that it's on, so we can apply it to our aluminum blank. Now that we have our 2 sheeted piece of vinyl, we take our aluminum blank, which has high intensity diamond grade, which you can see behind me. We have all different colors. We have orange, yellow, white, depending on the type of signs. Most of our white signs are regulatory, and the yellow ones are warning signs. And right here, all I'm doing is pushing the transfer tape a little tighter to the vinyl. And then from there, we peel it back, our plastic, which basically leaves us with a big sticker. We put it on the aluminum. And when we're done here, we take our transfer tape off, and as you can see, we're left with Dundas.
All right, everyone, if we can reconvene, please. The next is the 2021 Resilience Grant recommendations. Ms. Wark, and then over to Ms. Bevan, I'm going to guess.
Thank you. I think it's that simple. I just would like to welcome Julie Bevan up to talk about the resiliency grants.
Good morning. Our role in the culture and events section, as you know, is that of convener, connector, facilitator, enabler, and funder. So I'm delighted to present this report to you today with recommendations on the Resilience Grant Funding Program to address needs in Nanaimo's arts and culture sector. Supporting the local arts and culture sector with strategic investment is outlined as an objective in the OCP to strengthen the city's economic base, to improve quality of life, enhance community identity and pride. And as such, in December, we brought forward a draft program, which Council approved, with a direction to staff to administer a special one-time program for 2021, deploying remaining funds from the Downtown Event Revitalization Fund. So the goal of this one-time program is to foster resilience in the arts and culture sector, and by extension in the broader community, by supporting local initiatives that contribute to the stability of the arts and culture ecosystem, that create public value, and that enable community members to take advantage of strategic opportunities. So following Council's approval, a call for applications for the 2021 Resilience Grant was launched early this year with a deadline of March 1st. To provide better service and to reduce barriers, particularly because we were endeavoring to attract first-time applicants, we developed new little tools like an easy-to-read FAQ sheet, a new way for people to upload their applications and their support material online, and we held an info session by Zoom to share details of the program and to answer people's questions. At the deadline, a total of 41 grant applications were received, which represented a request of $162,000. Staff undertook a rigorous review of applications based on the approved grant program eligibility and assessment criteria. A copy of the guidelines, the forms, and the assessment tool that staff developed is enclosed in your report as an attachment. The assessment tool, which is called the Resilience Fund Review Checklist, points to how each application was scored. As outlined in the grant program guidelines, funding priorities included the following: new one-time programs, events, or initiatives taking place this year, organizational activities designed to adapt or respond to the COVID-19 pandemic by addressing capacity issues and managing transition. So this included opportunities related to human resources, governance, community engagement, outreach, revenue diversification, mentorships, pursuing goals of equity, diversity, and accessibility and inclusion. And we were looking for projects by new applicants seeking funding from the City of Nanaimo for the first time. Further to these priorities, applications were scored based on 4 categories: artistic merit, community impact, feasibility, and demonstrated need. Artistic merit is determined following principles such as originality, clarity of vision, and how it advances artistic practice in a given discipline. Community impact is measured by how a project will promote local arts and culture in Nanaimo and its potential for a community outcome in the form of specific outreach, educational benefit, audience development, economic impact, or volunteer participation. Feasibility is assessed based on evidence of accurate budget projections, clarity and detail of project goals, and a demonstrated capacity to undertake the work proposed through evidence of skills or previous related undertakings. And demonstrated need assesses whether the proposed project had demonstrated a need of funds requested, and it's measured by assessing the budgets that are presented.
Ms. Bevan, if I can just ask, in terms of demonstrated needs, so that relates to the project itself as opposed to the artist's ability to make a living, is that, am I?
It looks really specifically at what they present to achieve this particular project that they put forward in the application. At a time when public-facing events have been difficult to plan and to undertake, the Resilience Program offered an opportunity for applicants to realize modest, COVID-safe projects that could increase their capacity for years to come, including individual artists and collectives. The available funds referred by Council in December will support 7 grants, as detailed in Attachment A, for a total of $28,559. Cancellations of other sector events and projects due to COVID, since the grants were approved in December, have resulted in an additional combined amount of $22,987 in unclaimed funds from the 2021 Downtown Event Revitalization Fund and the 2021 Culture and Heritage Project grants. This is money that's been allocated for grants but could not be used because of COVID cancellations. So staff are recommending utilizing these funds for a further 6 grant applications. If these recommendations are approved, the combined funding recommendations presented in the report will support 13 projects, representing a 31% success rate in this program. Outcomes of the funding recommendations that we're bringing forward today will include activities such as the creation of new original music compositions, new dance performances online, small-scale community presentations and performances, the commissioning of a new theater work, undertaking of music workshops, skill sharing and visual arts dialogues, online visual arts marketing initiatives, and the online publication of work by local writers and artists. These activities, both large and small in scope, help to raise the overall capacity of the arts and culture sector in Nanaimo, and each project contributes directly to the local economy and social and cultural vibrancy, and will fulfill the city's goal of offering support to and investment in the arts and culture sector. All grant recipients are required to submit a final report on their activities and the community impact of their projects by March 31st, 2022. And in conclusion, I just want to acknowledge the work of Rebecca Buckler and Michelle Dirksen and Allison Collins for their work on this program and the report. Thanks, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bevan. Councillor Brown.
If there's no questions, I would like to move A to C.
And seconded, but we've got, if you want to speak to it, but Councillor Bonner and Councillor Thorpe have questions. You don't need to speak to it?
I support it.
Thank you. Brevity is the soul of, yes. Councillor Bonner and then Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I would also say that I support this. I do have some questions. Is every single one of the applicants a resident of Nanaimo?
Correct. That was one of the, let me double check. I'm just gonna look back here at Allison, who will give me a signal. Yes, that is correct. Being a resident of Nanaimo was a key eligibility criteria for this program.
Yeah, and thank you, I appreciate that. Did we ever, in terms of, like, how do we promote this? Brian, I know you just give your report there, but do we go to the schools, or do we go to other organizations, or do we just put a call out and expect other people to find it?
That's a good question. In this case, our ability to promote things in person was limited, obviously. But that, with the goal of reaching more people with these funds and with arts and culture grants going forward, that's something that we're looking at, how we're connecting with people. In this case, we issued a news release. There was a news article in the bulletin. We shared it out through various networks in our Love Arts Nanaimo e-newsletter, and made ourselves available to answer questions because especially we're trying to serve first-time applicants as part of this program.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to say I'm in support of this program. I wanted to bring up something that I think has been talked about in this council before, and that's the question of committees. And today's example is another example of, and I think it's all of the grants that we provide to everybody are decided by staff. Now, I'm not suggesting that staff's not qualified to make these applications and these things, but it's all of the decisions on made here is done basically in an in-camera meeting, because there's no minutes of it, and it's not an open public meeting. And I just think that there's a question of transparency here, and it's not that I'm questioning the qualifications and ethics of our staff. It's just that there's no way for the general public to say, how come that person got it and this person didn't get it? Because we used to, when we did have committees that made these decisions, council would get all of the minutes. They'd see pretty well all of the applications, and then the final decision would be made by council. And we're not getting any of that. We're getting a list of the applicants who are successful, a named list of the applicants who weren't successful, and that's it. And I'm only bringing this up because I do think it's a question of transparency to the public, and it isn't a criticism. Just the way we're doing it now. It's just that we used to be doing it before through committees and public meetings, and I think that's something we should be considered looking at forward. And again, I'm in favor of the applications and the process that went there. I just think we should need to look at this thing further. Thank you.
Ms. Bevan.
That aspect is something we're actually engaged in research, undertaking research right now, looking at best practice among many municipalities in terms of what kinds of structures and processes are used to adjudicate grants. So that's something as part of a funding program review that we're looking at particularly right now, and we'll come back with.
Mm-hmm. And just the concept of the best practices amongst municipalities, I know this is the easiest and cheapest way to get it done, right? Because committees are expensive. But as a person who runs a couple of businesses, sometimes you just have to pay more money than you think you should be paying just to get it done right. So, and again, I'm not saying staff's not doing it right. I'm just saying sometimes you just have to pay to have the committees so that we have the transparency and it's all above board. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. First to Councillor Bonner's comment, and I don't disagree, but in fairness, this was a decision of a former council to delegate this to staff, and maybe when we look in future at our committee structure again, we might want to revisit this whole topic, but it was council direction. My question through you, Your Worship, to Ms. Bevan is regarding new applicants. And I note in the report that you were striving to get new applicants, but I can't help but also comment that when I look through the recommended recipients, I see an awful lot of familiar names and organizations. So, and I'm not disagreeing with those recommendations, but I would like your comment on how successful the initiative was to encourage new applicants to come forward.
Well, by opening it up to applications from individual professional artists and collectives, we definitely saw an influx of applications because of that shift in the eligibility criteria. And looking at this list, the majority of these projects that are recommended to receive funding today are actually first-time applicants to the city's funding programs through arts and culture. So it was quite successful in that regard. I don't have the percentage at my fingertips in terms of how many applications from newcomers we received, but it was substantial, and I can follow up with that information.
Oh, that's fine, and I'm sure as we return to, quote, normal, then the word will spread even more quickly, and hopefully we'll have even more fulsome response in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bevan. I just looking at the report, a total of 41 applications were received, a total request of 162,000. And to follow on Councillor Bonner's concerns about the process, have we had complaints from anybody about the process?
None that we have received in our offices at this time, but I know that there's keen interest on many in the arts and culture sector here. in terms of these funding programs and the recommendations going forward. So there are people, I'm sure, who want to make sure that the city is aligning with best practices.
But again, I repeat myself, and I tend to get stuck on this concept, never wishing to be a solution in search of a problem. To your knowledge, we're not getting any complaints about the current process. Apart from my two councillors over there. So are we getting letters from the public or emails complaining about the transparency of
None
the
that I
process?
have
Effectively?
received.
Okay. Thank you. Someone care to make the recommended motion? Did?
It has been
Talking
made.
so long, yes, sorry, thank you, you're right. All those in favor and any contrary? Seeing none, thank you very much. Ms. Bevan, much appreciated. Do we have any other business? None, Ms. Snellgrove? A motion for adjournment. Move Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Thank you. So I'll expect you to be sending your letters in.